most writers do have a rather long route to take, and therefore, I guess whether it's scenic, I'm not sure. Often it is a rough ride, and I guess we hope that eventually it gets to be a scenic space that you look from. That I'm published, I'm getting recognition for my work, because a lot of times many writers do not, well, writers' work do not see it printed. And as long as you're not published and you don't have readers, it is very, very lonesome and difficult.
So, I wrote How to Get Published in India, which is India's only guidebook on how to write a book, then publish a book, and then market a book. And it's also got essays on top of that from Jeffrey Archer, Shobha Day, Twinkle Khanna, all the top authors, editors, agents like Kanishka, ghostwriters. So I wrote it as an inspirational tale, but it seems to be a cautionary tale because it tells you, it gives you this behind the scenes in publishing. And it's apparently scared a lot of people because I think there's such a misconception of how publishing works versus how it actually works.
So I think 10 or 15 years ago, we did not have, literary festivals. I mean, JLF had started out, but it was very small scale. And we did not have so many publishers to choose from. Like there was HarperCollins, there was Rupa, there was Penguin. So it was next to no agents either, one or two agents, but they were not like full-time into agenting. So it was next to impossible to get access to publishers, B, get unbiased feedback from, people who are from the business, editors. I mean, I started out as a writer. I struggled a lot, and when I wrote my first book, I was 22, and at the time, it was just impossible. That you just went on the Penguin website, they had this generic ID, nobody responded on that email ID. One or two other publishers, again, it was impossible to connect with, editors. We did not have forums where we could educate, where publishers could be in direct kind of contact with authors and educate them about publishing. We did not have Meghna's book, which by the way is very useful. We did not have, BLF has an initiative called the Lit Mart. So, they shortlist some submissions, and those submissions are shared with the publishing professionals. And tomorrow, I think, we have 3 different 1-hour slots where we will be giving our feedback on those. There was nothing. So I think we've come a long way in spreading more awareness about publishing, how publishing works. Now we have 8 or 9 agents. Many of the, 6 or 7 years ago, I was completely relying on slush piles to get authors, and now authors who have access to all the publishers in India, many of them who have access to publishers abroad as well, they are signing up with agents because, we are specialists, we are focusing on... Nobody is more powerful than authors, but authors are not as empowered as publishers. I would say we are pretty low down in the hierarchy because, we are just representing authors. But I think authors need to be empowered, but that's a separate question, and that empowerment has to come in the form of better royalties, better advances, better marketing. So many authors bemoan the state of marketing in India.
Yeah, a lot of writers get their books published, but the distribution is so poor that it hardly leaves the warehouse, and then the book is pulped. So it's very important not just that you have a publisher who published the work, but he also has a marketing team and a sales team, and also if you have an agent who then takes you on tours and gets you the kind of exposure your book needs, and also meeting the right kind of audience who'll be interested in your work. That happens after you're published.
So can I ask you all a question? How many books do you think you need to sell to be a bestseller in India? Just take a wild guess. In a country of 1.3 billion people. Huh? 100,000? 3,000? You're, okay.
You have to be part of publishing. This is inside info.
So 10,000 is usually considered the benchmark for bestsellers. And can you imagine, of all the books that come out, there are around 1 lakh of books that come out every year in India. Guess how many of these actually manage to even sell more than 10,000 copies? Worse, 1%. 90% of books sell less than 2,000 copies. Just let that register. So only 9% of books sell between 2,000 to 10,000 copies. So the numbers are, and 2% of books that are actually published make it to bookstores. Have you entered a bookstore recently? There's so much merchandise, right? Where's the space for books? So what's happening is we're competing not just with the 1 lakh books that are coming out in India, you're competing with the 75 million books that exist in the world, with the 2 million books that are published every year. You're competing with Netflix, you're competing with WhatsApp, Twitter, you're competing with Taylor Swift, you're competing with fake news, you're competing with the 75,000 music albums that come out, the 10,000 movies that come out. So it's not just when people say, are you competing with other authors? I'm like, no, I feel sorry for other authors. I try to lift them up because my competition is not with other authors. My competition is for people's time who will bother to pick up my book out of the scores, millions and millions of options they have and spend a few hours with it and spend money on it.
So let me come to Abhivyakti, who's a commissioning editor at Hachette. And Abhivyakti has spent time in publishing in the US.
Yes.
Writing reviews for publishers
weekly. Yes.
So, like I said, at the start of the conversation of the panel, that in the last 10 years, aspiring authors have a lot of material.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of knowledge about, the publishing industry. But in the US, the scenario is different. So, most authors, they know about agents. There are these writing groups and communities where, they share their chapters and then they fine-tune their pitches.
Yes.
So I just wanted to know what is the kind of difference that you've seen in the quality of pitches you get from writers directly at Hachette as opposed to, the material that you saw in the US?
So first I'll speak of Indian publishing and then we'll move to the comparison. I think there are 3 ways in which we receive submissions. One is via the agents. Second is the author approaches us directly because they found the email ID. Third is when the author knows an author who's already published with us and it goes the route. So there are 3 ways in which we do. We average about 5 to 6 submissions every day. And then we take it to the team where there are n number of things, n number of tests that the manuscript has to pass, not only the premise, the writing quality, or the reader that they are trying to address, but also in what format do we envision the book? What does the costing of the book hence looks like? Is it A, hardback, or B, paperback, or demi, or royal? And then what the P&L allows for us to do with the book.
So can you tell the audience how many times have you been forced to reject a good book because of financial reasons or because of, the market scenario? Because authors should not feel disheartened if their work is rejected because many a times it's not rejected because of the quality.
I would say we have never let go of a good book, at least during the time since I've been here at Hachette, at least the submissions that have come to me, the books that have really spoken to us, to me in particular, we have never come about and rejected it because we see some merit to it that sort of supersedes the economics and finance portions of the industry. So that being said, however, it has to be a sustainable business. There are people working 9 to 5 jobs within the industry. They have to keep the lights on. They have to keep the food on the table. So you as an editor also has to be in a responsible position where you're making the right decision in terms of how it drips down to the people down the hierarchy within the company. How much does it make sense? And speaking to your point of having rejected good manuscripts, also sometimes what happens is that the manuscript is good enough, but it also depends on the taste of the editor. Or the editor feels competent enough or confident enough to carry that manuscript until the end stages.
But does Hachette or publishing houses in general, do they accept good books even if good books in the similar genre in the past have not done well for them? Because I don't think so. I know of publishing houses who stopped acquiring poetry after burning their fingers with, poetry collections and... How can good authors write bad books? Do you mean bad books by good famous authors?
Bad books by famous.
Oh, absolutely, especially in the non-fiction space. And so,
But be a smart reader. Read the best books, not the best-selling ones. I always tell people.
Are we talking about marketing and accepting of manuscripts?
Yeah.
so most of my pitches, and especially if I feel that it's going to be difficult to place a book or get immediate interest from publishers, if I feel that yes, I'll find a right editor for a book, but that editor will end up acting as my agent, trying to push the cause of the book. So what I do is I get authors to prepare marketing plans. I have to be very honest with you. the kind of people they can reach out to on Twitter, social media, who can influence the book. So that makes a lot of difference. But yeah, bad books and by good writers.
No, I don't think that's the case, always.
And also bad books by non-writers. There are a lot of non-writers.
Yeah.
I remember canceling a contract with a very famous spiritual leader who has millions of followers on social media, Instagram. So, obviously I was not in touch with him directly, and I was in touch with a bunch of people who were helping him put this proposal together. The proposal, we signed the contract on the basis of his following, and I knew that whoever ends up publishing him or agenting him will make tons of money. So the proposal came to me, and there was a chapter also, but I said this is not a book proposal, and this is not a chapter. And I was told to go on YouTube, hear his pravachan, and then turn that into a book proposal. So I cancelled the contract with him. So but publishers have to make money, and these books sell, and most of the times it's their followers, it's the captive audience that buys books. So.
And also not just money, but I think also you have to recognize the reader's taste. This is developing. So for example, commercial fiction, it hasn't been doing that well is what the notion is. But since I think Prajwal is sitting right here, so I'll tell you that she had a fantastic manuscript, and that we acquired recently, Prajwal Hegre. She's one of the best tennis journalists in the country. And she wrote one of the best rom-coms ever, romance fiction ever. And traditionally, they haven't been doing well in India, at least in the Indian side of publishing. But still, we went ahead and acquired it because we see merit in the positioning, we see merit in the manuscript, we see merit in the talent, and that is how you go about it. So I think that is what, it depends editor to editor, taste to taste.
Now, Meghna, you have written literary fiction. You won an award for your the collection of stories you published with Penguin. And you have also written commercial. You've also written a crime novel. How difficult was it to market these books?
I was in my debut novel, 1.5 Wife, was published in 2012 by Westland. And the biggest shock for me was because after spending years writing the manuscript, cleaning it up, editing, rewriting, then spending another year learning how to approach publishers, because I was a journalist at that time. I was working in New York, and I said, I will not get published unless it's a top 3 publishers. And I was very clear in my mind, and I've always stuck to that. So I spent a year actually researching how to approach publishers, which is one area where I feel a lot of aspiring writers are going wrong. Your query letter, aside from your manuscript and your sample chapters, is going to be the deciding factor for whether or not you get published. The rejection rates, by the way, in publishing for traditional publishers, like my publisher is primarily Penguin, their rejection rates are 95%. That means your chances of getting published, and an editor, by the way, gets every minute, every 3-4 minutes, you get a new manuscript in your inbox. Now, how many are you going to read? Why will a publisher who doesn't know your background, who doesn't know you, read your email, read your query letter, read your sample chapters? They're going to spend exactly 60 seconds if they open your query letter and read the sample chapters.
And sorry,
you have
this
literally
sounds self-promotional, but reach out to an agent, because there are quite a few publishers who have stopped looking at unsolicited manuscripts.
So how do you get past that, those rejection rates?
The reason is because of the high costs, editors are supposed to perform the task of a marketing person. They're supposed to look at contracts, accompany famous authors to different literary festivals. So I think their reading time
is very limited. So I think the barriers to entry right now for publishing seem to be low, right? Because of the advent of self-publishing. Like I can take a photo of my shoe, upload it as a cover of a book, and somebody's done this, by the way, and call myself a published author. So publishing a book, if you're self-publishing, is very easy. Marketing the book is extremely tough. So that's where I really got stuck, because I didn't know that after all the rigmarole, the years I had spent trying to get my book picked up by a top publisher, I'll also have to do a little thing called marketing the book. And I learned through the job, jo dikta hai, wo bikta hai. In India today, I told you the numbers already, right? How many books are coming out? How do you capture the reader's attention? So unfortunately, your editors are inundated, your publishers are inundated. They're coming out with a new book almost every day. You are going to have to be the biggest champion of your own book. So you're going to have to market it. So that was another big learning lesson.
I have a question for Malachi. So I wanted to know if there is a vibrant ecosystem for aspiring writers, support system, ecosystem for aspiring writers writing in English in Malaysia. And can you also tell us more about the Malaysian publishing industry?
Sure, thank you. There are certainly, there is an ecosystem, and what is really thriving is popular culture fiction, that and young adult literature. So you find that in Malaysia, again, we are a multicultural nation. So the Malay language, which is the official language, the language in which education is carried out, you find that there are a lot of books that come out. And so if you're writing in Malay, you have access to more publishers than if you are writing in English. And often, what happens in Malaysia is that you get some local independent publisher to publish you, and then these publishers often take you to other book festivals. For example, if they think your book is worth pitching at the Frankfurt Book Festival, so they would then take it there and find international publishers. And this has happened to quite a few publishers. So in that sense, the route for international publication in Malaysia is slightly different. And it is the publisher who actually does this. And you need a very aggressive publisher for that. And there aren't many, unfortunately. And occasionally we do get a few Malaysians who make it big. For example, the Man Booker Prize winner for Asia, Tan Tuan Eng, his book was published in the UK.
Oh, he's been shortlisted for the main Booker Prize twice.
Yes,
Yep.
and then he went on to win the Asia Booker Prize. He won the Walter Scott Prize for historical fiction, then went on to make a movie. Now, these are exceptional cases. But what it does say is that it can happen. So again, it's a kind of pandering to what the international readership wants.
How big is the appetite for Indian writers amongst Malaysian readers? Because I know Georgetown Literary Festival is very famous, and they always end up inviting a lot of writers from India and the rest of South Asia. So,
Yeah, I'm just coming from the Georgetown Literary Festival, where I launched my collection of poetry. Again, if you're writing in a certain genre, for example, if you're writing poetry, you're going to find that there are very few publishers. In fact, I know of publishers who actually have it in their philosophy or manifesto. Please do not send us poetry. We want to make money, send us fiction. Yeah. But what we have in the Georgetown Literary Festival is a very lively, dynamic situation where we bring in, it's very similar to this, certainly smaller in number, but we have a wide group of international writers. And again, it's nice to be in India and to talk about what's happening in Malaysia, because I think there's a lot of common ground that writers encounter. Yeah. Thank you.
Meghna, I want you to tell the audience about your book. How did it come into being? The book, How to Get Published.
Like I was telling you, I am not from the industry. I was a journalist. I didn't have any mentors. I didn't know anyone in the publishing industry. So the only way I found to get published was through sheer hard work. There are no shortcuts, but you also have to hang on to that hope that you don't quit 5 minutes before the miracle. Because I won't lie to you, it's not easy. It's a very rigorous process. Even after you get published, it's extremely rigorous to get people to buy your book. Because so much of your time and effort goes into marketing yourself, which doesn't come naturally to most of us, because as writers, we're isolated, right? We are by nature introverts. So I think we become ambiverts because there's so many parts of your personality you have to tap into. So you first write the book in isolation, and then suddenly you're supposed to put yourself out there and sell the book and market yourself. So I would say be in it for the long haul. And the one thing I advise people is don't think that you'll become famous by being a writer. If you want to be famous, become even a B-grade TV star, or become a cricketer, neta, abhineta, become Priyanka Chopra's dog, you'll be more famous, because authors are not celebrities. I keep telling people, very few authors are.
Alia Bhatt's cat
Yeah.
was on the cover of HT Bunch. Yeah, she was. So yeah, Priyanka's dog.
And don't do it for, you're not going to get fame out of it. You're also not going to get money. I'm very sorry to say. Do you know how much the advances are for books? They've gone down even further after the pandemic.
50,000 to
Yeah.
75,000 for fiction. And
Yeah.
that's also spread over
Tranches, yeah.
tranches. And then
Yeah.
you'll have to chase the publisher to release the payment. So
Yeah.
that's going to take another 30 days and 300 emails.
There's no money in publishing, so you can't do it for the fame or the money. You're only doing it out of a pure love for telling stories. So focus on that to get your voice out there. And I'm a puritanical in that way. I'm literally I'm like Kanishka said, I don't write in one particular genre. I write the story that comes to me, the book that I think needs to be written, and it's worked for me. I've won multiple awards. Publishers are chasing me. My latest novel, Boys Don't Cry, has got picked up for a movie. So I feel like if you're in it for the long run, and like the Gita says, do it for the love, the passion, do it for the action. Don't do it for the consequences of those actions. So don't tell stories because you think you'll get something in return. Do it because it's helping you in some way. You want to tell good stories. So I think that'll keep the whole process a little bit simpler.
I'm really not sure whether they'll agree with you. You want to have a livelihood as a writer. Writing because
in
you love to
India.
write is not going to
No, not
feed
in
the
India.
kids.
Abhivyakti, what do you feel about this whole explosion of digital storytelling platforms, and these big, heavily publicized books to film,
Yeah.
deals? I mean,
Yeah.
should aspiring authors with great stories take heart in the fact that there are like different formats in which the story can travel to?
That is absolutely, I feel that's a welcome development for many reasons. And book to screen, I think it's a great opportunity for even a non-reader to get to know about authors and books that are out there on which the CDs are based. So that is great. Speaking to your point of it, so reading is a very intensive activity, right? It's and as opposed to like audiobooks or listening to audiobooks that's a passive activity. You can do it while doing other things. I think that's one of the reasons that it has taken off. As for reading, I think there's still very much the reader who prefers a physical copy of a book, so like that culture is still here to stay, so that's not going anywhere. But there are lots many opportunities. So speaking to that, you don't really need traditional publishers in a very visceral sense, because the freedom of internet has given writers immediate access to their readers. What we bring to the table is probably a strong distribution arm, is a certain reputational equity that we bring. It's the goodwill that we can leverage off of the industry folks, the relationships that we have built over the years. And Hachette India, I believe, were one of the first publishers in India who said that we are not welcoming unsolicited submissions anymore. And we would prefer that agents bring the submissions to us for various reasons. One of them being that it's always good sense to not mix commerce and creativity. The vocabulary around the contract and the finance part of things is always better handled by the agent than by the author.
Not only that, but most of the mainstream publishing houses like Harper, Penguin, and to a certain extent Hachette also, they have different commissioning editors who have a different commissioning mandate.
Yeah.
And because the agents are in constant touch with them, they know what exactly an editor is looking for. If writers go make cold calls, then they will probably have access to one editor.
I mean, speaking to Meghna's point, I think she said very well that the query letter does wonders, a good query letter. And I think the query letters that we receive from the agents and the marketing potential that they see in the book and how they think the story might travel with the reader, that becomes so important to us because that's our first introduction to the book. And that being handled by somebody who's been in the industry, is seasoned enough to understand different genres and how everything functions, it makes the job so much easier for us, and then to trust the manuscript because we in turn trust the agent. So that culture, I think, is very much important. And yeah, and this is speaking to your point about American publishing also. I think American publishing, they do not welcome unsolicited submissions anymore. The agent culture is quite strong, both in performance art as well as in publishing. And I think I'm glad to see that sort of becoming a thing here in India as well. And yes, I think agents are a major force behind getting the books to screen. I mean, they are the primary driving force in envisioning a book a certain way. While I do not recommend that the writers start their book thinking of it being a series one day on Netflix, that's a very wrong way to go about writing a book or plotting a book.
Can we take a question? Or question or two? No. So we've run out of time. I'm so sorry. Any closing remarks from any of you?
I just think that,
For aspiring writers, for
yeah, as a writer, you have to be aware whether you're doing literary fiction or whether you're going to genre writing. And, that makes a whole lot of difference because literary fiction takes longer for recognition, whereas when you write genre-based fiction, chances are you might get a hit faster than a literary writer. Thank you.
So it's not an easy journey to get published, but be a lotus in spite of the swarm. Do it for the love of telling stories, and please don't quit your full-time job, because in India, at least, you cannot pay even the electricity bill with the kind of advances and royalties you get in India. And honestly, pick up this book, not because I've written it, but because it's unfortunately the only guide in India that we have that'll help take you through the entire process and handhold you, because it's a very lonely, very isolating process. So good luck to you and look forward to reading all your books.
Having said that there is very little money in publishing, it has a lot of intangible benefits. And also it's a very creatively and intellectually rewarding exercise. So let's
Very
not be so
satisfying.
discouraging. No?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much to all the panelists and thank you to everyone else.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kanishka.